Alright fellas, listen up. I'm gonna tell you a little story about a couple of guys called the Legends of New Haven County. Now these boys grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, and they had to make do with whatever they had, which wasn't much. There was times the only shoes they wore was cardboard duct tape to their feet. By the time they started driving, they already had the itch to go racing real bad. Trouble was, they had no money, and those boys from the other side of town had daddies with plenty of cash. So they was driving all sorts of fancy fast cars like Hemi Cudas, Corvettes, big block Camaros. Some even had real deal race cars they trailered to the street racing hotspots. Now when these poor boys started out, they had no money. The only thing they had to work with was the junk cars left in the yard by their grandpa and uncles. So they went ahead and cobbled together a couple of hot rods with what they had. With no money for racing parts, they had to make their own. They done things like taking the stock cams, building up the lobes with weld, and grinding them by hand to what they needed. You fellas think your engines were hot with your 3/4 race cams? Well, the Legends ground theirs to full 1 3/4 race cams. What's that? You got 12-to-1 squeeze? Well, guess what? The Legends went with 17-to-1 with pistons they made right in the yard behind the house. When they got the hot rods up and running, they knew they had something special. Those boys on the other side of town thought their 7,000 RPM engines were the shit, but the junk the Legends built revved all the way to 10,500 RPM. The Legends took their hot rods out to the test on the service road behind the city dump. They didn't want the rich boys to know what was coming, but it was no use trying to hide them because the engines were so loud you could hear them all the way in the next county 20 miles away. The next weekend, the Legends took the cars over the train tracks to the racing hotspot on Resource Parkway behind the industrial park. When they pulled up, shut them off, and got out, it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Those rich boys looked like a bunch of deer caught in the headlights. They knew they was in trouble now, and the fear had set in. One of the Legends spoke up. "Who's first? Let's race." One by one, the Legends picked off every one of those fancy rich boys' cars like shooting fish in a barrel of water. By the time the night was over, the Legends were not poor anymore, and they drove off with 6 girls in each car. And that, fellas, is how the Legends of New Haven County came to be. The Legends of New Haven County. Well, they're traveling from town to town. They're shutting everybody down. And first they'll take your money, and then they'll take your girlfriend too. So if you don't want to lose, you best not be around when the Legends of New Haven County show up.